Hello everyone, so welcome back. In the previous video, we looked at the impact of Saturn's transit in the sign of Pisces and the impact on the world. And mostly we saw the broad range impact on the world. So next we'll do the same for Jupiter's transit in the sign of Taurus for 2023. Okay. So in terms of Jupiter's transit, by default we have to understand that Jupiter is going to be in an enemy dignity in the sign of Taurus. Okay. And one of the main intentions of making this video was to discuss the impact of this on the world. All right. So this is because Venus is an enemy to Jupiter in astrology, so we have to treat that as an enemy dignity here. However, it is still a Earth sign, which is a natural Earth house, that is Taurus, and Jupiter is the Karaka for the second house of finances. Okay, so it's a very interesting relationship between Jupiter and the sign of Taurus. Okay, one, it's an enemy dignity, but still is the natural Karaka for that. That itself is a very important point to take into account when we discuss the impact of financial matters in this case. Okay. Further, it is a year-long transit of Jupiter, so if he undergoes aspects of enemies Mercury and hard aspects from other grahas, the results can vary. Okay, Mercury is another enemy to Jupiter, so whenever such things happen in transits, it will have a strong impact on the world. So now the situation becomes interesting because the global economic situation looks bleak as the International Monetary Fund IMF predicts a recession for 2023 for major parts of the world. It's already set in, right? The impact is already severe as we are also in the state of hyperinflation impacting many countries across the world because of the pandemic, the trade issues between China and USA and so on. Okay. So macroeconomic crisis, that what we are in now. Jupiter is the natural karaka for dana or wealth, and Taurus is the natural house of wealth. Alright. However, Jupiter is in a Shuddhita Avashta. We call this a starved state in the sign of Venus because Venus is an enemy to Jupiter. So Venus is going to starve Jupiter in that Rashi. Alright. This is the Avashta. Avashta means a state that the Graha is experiencing that. Alright. The interesting bit to me is that a starvation is nothing but a scarcity. A recession is a period of temporary economic decline during which trade and industrial activity are reduced. Okay. So generally identified by a fall in the GDP in two successive quarters. So that's basically what we are in now, right? So it is very apt if you test the Ayanamsha. Normally in the sidereal zodiac, Jupiter would be transiting in Aries by now, and any other Ayanamsha, if you take into account, if you say some other things you want to test, Jupiter could be in Gemini, all right? But in the tropical zodiac, it will be very apt to see that Jupiter will be in Taurus for the whole year when we are experiencing this reduced economic growth as well as the decline in many ways. Okay. But the unique nature of Jupiter in Taurus is that even though there is a Shuddhita Avashta created, which might result in lack of growth, still the economy will rebound or sustain. Okay, that's the very interesting bit for Jupiter in the sign of Taurus. Because he is the natural Dhanakaraka as well, right, for the second house. And wherever Jupiter is transiting, he has to manifest that house. Okay, we'll get to that in a bit. So I predict that yes, there will be a slowdown, there will be some turbulent times, but the benefic nature of Jupiter will at least lead to maintenance of the economy, either in the form of interest rate hikes or other ways that many other countries are implementing. We are seeing that continuously happen. There will not be a complete meltdown like in the year 2008 or before that. Okay, we have seen that crisis or a complete crash. I do not expect that to happen now. Okay. So this is because of the natural Karaka Jupiter transiting in the natural Dhanasthana of Taurus. Okay. So that is the global impact on the world. So we will have a crisis, and that's no surprise. I mean, without astrology or any economic, Nobel Prize laureate to come and explain this, it's no surprise, right? Because what we are seeing is the aftermath of the pandemic and also the war, and we can sort of adjust and adapt to that. We are already aware this was upcoming. Okay, it's not a surprise that this has happened. So next, when COVID struck the world, I had predicted that the stock market crash would happen in 2020 to the accuracy of the month. All right, so if you want to read about that article, you can find it on my blog. That year, Jupiter was actually in debilitation in the tropical sign of Capricorn. All right, so this is that chart. So this is not at the exact date of the pandemic start. So for those charts, you will find it in the article here. Okay, so this is a chart that I cast for 8th of January 2020. We need this chart. I will explain the reason why. Okay, so in this chart, if you see, Jupiter was actually debilitated in the sign of Capricorn. Okay, however, now Jupiter is not in debilitation in the sign of Taurus, but Jupiter is in a Shuddhita avastha, a starved state. Okay, so this is an interesting bit with grahas that are in starved state. Starvation, of course, denies whatever that naturally is meant to manifest in that Rashi. On the other hand, a graha that is starved will also not let that Rashi operate at its best, which is Taurus in this case. Okay. So, what is the natural state of the sign of Taurus is that it's the Rashi of self worth. Okay, it is the worth of something that we have to define, right? Like money or any commodity as a certain worth. That is what we see in the sign of Taurus. All right. So when we have a starved planet there, and most often the starvation would happen by Jupiter being there because he goes into starvation. Venus starves Jupiter there, right? Or you could have the nodes there. Okay, and the nodes will always move that Rashi to behave in extremes depending on the state of the Lord, which is Venus. Okay, then Sun will also go into starvation in the sign of Taurus because it's a natural enemy sign for the Sun, and so on. Okay, so anytime that Rashi gets afflicted, which is very important. Okay, I do not know how many astrologers will let you know about using these kind of things, but pay attention because when the Rashi gets afflicted, that Rashi will not operate at its best, right? So what's happening here is Taurus is going to get afflicted overall in the natural zodiac. So the worth of something will also get afflicted. And what is the worth that we're talking about? The worth of goods here. Okay. And the hyperinflation or a deflation, for instance, any of those are extremes. Okay. So an inflated economy or a deflated economy is when Taurus is not operating at its best or Venus is not operating at its best. Okay. When money has no value, that's when you see Taurus is getting afflicted. Okay. So same for us human beings. When you have an excess pride or lack of pride, okay, when you have excess self-esteem or a sort of a garvita, that is, we say dur ahankara, right? Not ahamkara, durhamkara. Okay, when you have that, and when you do not have any self-esteem at all, when you feel that you're not worth something, that's when Taurus is not operating at its best in your chart. Okay, so these are some advanced things, but I'm bringing these points here because it's how you must also use when you are analyzing any horoscope. It does not matter a transit chart or a birth chart or a yearly chart, etc. Okay, so now the worth of commodities are not at its best. It's either inflated or deflated, and it's not anything got to do with the right price now. Okay, that's basically it. And then you think about what is the right value of Taurus then. Okay, you have to ponder about that and see what graha will give the right value for Taurus there. Okay, that's something that you must use for food for thought from this video. So Jupiter will be Rashi aspecting the sign of Capricorn though. Okay, so from Taurus where Jupiter is transiting, so this is that chart which is for 2nd of June 2023. So Jupiter will be in Taurus that time. Okay, so from this point, Jupiter will Rashi aspect Capricorn, he will Rashi aspect Cancer, he will also Rashi aspect Libra. But for us, the most important points are going to be Capricorn and Cancer. Okay, I will discuss that now. Okay. So the transit of Jupiter in the sign of Taurus is a feed forward effect of whatever has happened in the sign of Capricorn during 2020. Okay, so from here, that was 8th of Jan 2020, we have progressed into the 2nd of June 2023. So that's a feed forward effect because of the Rashi aspect. Okay, why it is like that? That will require a special treatment or a video of its own. I will cover that towards the end of this year when I discuss some interesting things about Rashi aspects. But for now, just stick with me. Okay, so it's a feed forward effect. Since Jupiter is the benefic graha, his Rashi aspects will manifest results. Alright, wherever Jupiter is placed, is going to give positive results. He will manifest or protect that. Okay, or he will avert major calamities in that arena of life. So the world is still experiencing the aftermath results of the 2020 crash, as there is a connection via the Rashi aspect to the sign of Capricorn. Alright, so here is when the economy crashed because of the pandemic, and because of that Rashi aspect, Taurus is also going to get impacted now. We are still in that energy spectrum, you can say. Okay. However, as previously mentioned, the Jupiter transit in 2023 is much better positioned than in 2020. Yes, it is not perfect, but we are getting there as the recovery is happening. Okay. My prediction is that the full recovery of the global economy from the pandemic and the war will not happen until Jupiter moves in the transit to the tropical sign of Cancer. This would be the period from 10th of June 2025 until 30th June 2026. This is when the recovery would be fully sustaining, but now it has not yet happened. Alright, we are progressing towards that because the Graha is moving from debilitation to exaltation. Okay, the movement of energy for Jupiter would be from Capricorn, Taurus to Cancer. Alright, that's the debilitation, enemy dignity to exaltation. That's the nature of the energy movement here. Alright. When Jupiter was transiting in Capricorn, he was in a Nicha or low state. That's what this placement shows. When Jupiter will transit in Cancer, he will reach the Ucha or high state. That's the opposite of it. He will be exalted. Okay. This will also complete one cycle from the Nicha to Ucha, approximately 7 years transit of Jupiter. So major changes are ahead for us, particularly in the next 2 to 3 years. Alright. In many ways, the pandemic was a result of man's actions, karma, and atrocities against nature. Okay. Saturn is the Karaka for nature and animals. Capricorn is the natural karmasthana. Remember, we encountered the pandemic during this time when there was a double transit where Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct. Okay, whenever they come together, we call this a double transit. That's when the pandemic happened. And it is the divine judgment. Jupiter is the divine judge. Saturn is the karmic judge in some sense. Alright. Was delivered when Jupiter was transiting in the sign of Capricorn. Okay. An interesting thing is this, that Mars when is in debilitation and Jupiter when is in exaltation. Okay, that is when peace is maintained. When Mars is exalted and Jupiter is in debilitation, that's war. Okay, so this axis of Capricorn and Cancer is the axis of war and peace. Alright, so now Mars will enter the sign of Cancer soon, where he will go in debilitation. Okay, so hopefully that will lead to the truce between Ukraine and Russia, and that will in turn impact the economy. And that's also where I feel this transit of Jupiter in Taurus would lead to some sustenance. Okay, it's not perfect, like I said, but it should lead to some sustenance. All right. We're also seeing major impact of the recession on all these, tech giants, software companies, right? And they had inflated growth, they had inflated worth. So sort of those worth is all being restructured or it is being balanced out now. Okay, so Facebook, Google, Microsoft, all these companies, they are facing the heat now, whichever companies had their inflated worth. Same thing will continue when Jupiter moves into Gemini very soon. That will happen next year onwards. Okay, so Gemini should still lead to some recovery for media centered companies at least. Okay, such as Google, Facebook and such. And finally, when it is in Cancer, the economy should completely rebound. Okay, so let's continue here. On 8th January 2020, this is the chart, all right, the time when the COVID pandemic gripped the world, Jupiter was in Lajita Shem Davashta in the transit chart as he was conjunct a node to the degree that was Jupiter Ketu conjunction, as you can see here. Okay, he was also conjunct enemy Mercury, causing Shudita starvation, conjunct the Sun, that is leading to agitation called Shobita, and then conjunct Saturn, which is causing Shudita. Alright, a lot of negative avastas. First of all, the Graha himself is not able to sustain, and then we have a host of negative impact on him. Alright, so the last time Jupiter came in direct contact with a node was on 8th of January 2020. Okay, exact conjunction, that's what we're talking about here. So next time Jupiter will conjunct a node to the degrees on 2nd of June 2023. This is that window. Okay, but this time it will be Rahu. Alright, this is the degree of conjunction, 3 degrees 33 minutes of arc in Taurus. The avastas pretty much remain the same for Jupiter except that there is no starvation on account of Saturn, which is very important. Alright, that's the good news, and there is no agitation from the Sun. But there is Lajita because he's conjunct a node, and there is severe Shudita on account of being conjunct Mercury once again, and also transiting in the Rashi of Venus, who will starve Jupiter. Okay, so there is a host of avastas once we'll feel. Alright. So as I mentioned, anytime the nodes conjunct a graha, they are going to make that graha operate in extremes. That Rashi will also operate in extremes. Okay, so we are in that situation now in the global economy. And Mercury, remember, is a Vaishya planet in astrology. Okay, Mercury and the Moon are responsible for trading, the stock market, everything. So around this time, again, the inflation and the hyper movement of these points on the stock market, etc., will probably get triggered. All right. Next, there is one interesting overlapping 2-month window of time in 2023. Okay, that time when Jupiter has entered Taurus and Rahu is still transiting in Taurus before moving to Aries. Okay, that is this window. So Rahu will move backwards to Aries soon, but Jupiter and Rahu are still there in the sign of Taurus at that time. So this window of time is from 16th of May 2023 to 18th of July 2023. This is an extremely important time because of that overlapping movement of Rahu over Jupiter and at the very cusp of entering Aries. Okay. So I expect some major financial developments, stock market and economic events to happen in this window of 2023. Okay. It will coincide with the shadow of the April to May 2023 eclipses. We have eclipses also lined up. It will be within that shadow of those eclipses. So any events that are triggered on a global scale in April to May 2023 will have continued impact until 18th July 2023. Okay. With peak being around first week of June 2023. All right. Almost 3 years ago, I had written this article related to the predictions of 2023. Again, you can read about that by clicking on this link. So when I wrote that article, it was about describing the pandemic, but I also wrote about 2023 3 years ago. So you can get more information from that. But keep track of those dates in this article and also the world events that I write about there. Okay. Also note one important point about upcoming Jupiter transit in Cancer, which is this soon to happen transit. That time Jupiter will be opposite to the degree and sign of Capricorn when the pandemic started. Okay, so the pandemic started at the very starting degrees when Jupiter moved into Capricorn around November 2019 was the exact date. So when that opposite degrees in Capricorn will get triggered when Jupiter will move into Cancer due to its opposition, that will also be an important trigger transit to that point. Okay, so it's something which you have to really pay attention to. So next we can go about describing the overall impact of Jupiter's transit for which rashis, which grahas will get impacted and so on. Again, for the 12 rashis, we will see that in the dedicated video, but this is a generic view, we can say, all right. In terms of Jupiter's transit, whichever Rashis is transiting will have Guru Bala. That's the manifesting potential of Jupiter. The positive impact of Jupiter will be there. Okay, so Taurus will get that Guru Bala. So this time, those Rashis that will be impacted are from 20th December 2022. Jupiter enters Aries after retrograde phase in Pisces. So Jupiter stays in Aries until 16th May 2023. During this time, Jupiter manifests any grahas and house cusps in Aries. So if you have any grahas in Aries, let's say this chart, Aries is the 7th house and there is no grahas, but if there was any grahas, those grahas will get manifested, those houses will get manifested. The positive impact will be there for Aries as a Rashi, okay? Then Jupiter moves into Taurus on 16th of May 2023. Jupiter stays in Taurus until 26th May 2024. From the period of approximately May 2023 to 2024, Jupiter manifests and positively impacts any grahas and house cusps in Taurus. Okay, very simple rule. So if you have any grahas in Taurus, whatever they might be, those will get strongly impacted. So what you must do is check what grahas and natural and charakarakas are located in the rashis of Aries and Taurus in your chart. Okay, so let's take that example chart. So in this example chart, we saw Moon and Rahu are placed in the sign of Taurus, and Jupiter himself is in the sign of Aries. Okay, so of course this is a chart that we cast for this year. So Jupiter is in Aries, but when he moves into the sign of Taurus, he will be strongly impacting Moon and Rahu in this natal chart. Okay, and then Jupiter will also Rashi aspect Capricorn, he will Rashi aspect Cancer, Rashi aspect Libra. So from this Rashi aspect, he will have strong impact on Sun, Mercury and Venus, no impact on Cancer, no impact on Libra because of a no grahas here, okay? But the cusps will get manifested. So Taurus is holding the 8th cusp, Cancer is holding the 10th cusp, Capricorn is holding the 4th cusp, Ascendant is in Libra. So these cusps will also have the benefic influences of Jupiter, okay? So this is something normally many astrologers will not take into account, okay, when they make predictions. All right, for you, when they describe their generic predictions with using transits as a tool, okay, for them life is difficult if they talk about so many things. All right, so they would only be focused on one Rashi at Taurus. Yes, that is correct that it will happen according to whatever grahas are in Taurus for Jupiter, but he will also be impacting other grahas in Capricorn, Cancer, Libra and the house cusps as well, okay. So that is why you'll see that life is just not one shade or one flavor that manifested in one year. You'll see so many different arenas get impacted. Okay, a person might buy a car, also get married, and then they might also move to a foreign country. All those things can happen in one year. So if a person goes to an astrologer and just if they make a prediction saying that you only get married and they do not know how to make predictions for the car or the foreign travel, that's because they have not taken these into account. Okay, and now you see what happens. Then you will have a wrong picture about astrology that time. You'll think the astrologer or the astrology as a science did not work, but in fact it's the astrologer who could not completely give the full answer to you. Okay, not because he or she did not know how to do it, it's because they were only using the generic techniques. Okay, so if you really want a full picture of your chart, you must analyze the chart from all these points of view. Okay, not only from one transit point of view. So those grahas will be manifested and positively impacted in whatever they are placed in the sign of Taurus. For example, taking the natural karakattvas of the grahas into account, if you have Sun in Aries or Taurus, your career, father, and life path will be impacted. If you have Moon in the Rashi of Aries or Taurus, the life of the mother, the mind, environment, or domestic life will be impacted, and so on. Okay, so it can be anything. For instance, in this chart, we saw Moon is also the 10th Rashi Lord. Okay, we saw that Moon was the Gnati Karaka, so the life of relatives with the 8th house flavor and the career part of life, as well as the father, will be impacted in Jupiter transiting to Taurus for this person. Okay, and so on. So you must also check the charakarakatwas of the grahas in Aries and Taurus to derive accurate predictions. Okay, that's a simple way to do it. Next, you can also check the house cusps in Aries and Taurus to see the exact impact on the people or indications of that house cusps. Okay, so in this case, we have the 8th house. When Jupiter moves in Taurus, 8th house will be impacted. When he was in Aries, 7th house will be impacted, and so on. Okay. For example, if you have the 7th house in Aries or Taurus, that is, if you have Libra or Taurus ascendant people, in this particular case, right, you can expect big changes, positive news, and developments in the area of relationships, your children, and creative projects. Okay, people can get married, they can conceive, all right, they can start a new business, and so on. If you have 10th house cusp in the sign of Aries or Taurus, that is, if the person is a Cancer or Leo Lagna people, you can expect big lucky breaks in the area of career, such as promotions, new projects, or new opportunities, etc. Okay, so this is just for example purposes I have put in here. We will see more in detail when we go to those rashis in the next videos or so. Okay, so next, even though Jupiter is benefic, an important manifestor in astrology, he can still be a malefic or inauspicious graha for your lagna. Okay, so for instance, for Libra itself, Jupiter rules the 3rd and the 6th house, so it's not an auspicious planet for the Libra ascendant. So do not expect Jupiter to always give good results for Libra. Okay, then here I use another example. For Aries Lagna, Jupiter is still the 12th lord of separation and losses. Okay, for Libra, he rules the 6th house of obstacles, delays, and losses. For Leo Lagna, he naturally rules the 8th house of insecurities and flaws. Further, Jupiter can rule the 6th, 8th, 12th house or cusp in the other Varga charts from D2 to D60 as well, which can make Jupiter the Graha to deliver inauspicious results in his transits over Karakatva Grahas or house cusps. Okay, so what this statement means is that we saw Jupiter was an inauspicious graha for Libra. Okay, he can also be inauspicious for Aries because he rules the 12th Rashi. Okay, likewise, Jupiter can rule any other house cusps in other Vargas. Okay, so let's take the impact of Jupiter here. Jupiter is the Darakaraka for this person. Okay, that shows the spouse. So if you look at the 7th divisional chart, the D7, or the 9th divisional chart, the D9, this is called the Saptamsha, this is called the Navamsha. Both these charts are extremely important for marriage and relationships. Okay, so now we know Jupiter actually has an impact on spouse or marriage for this person. Okay, and Jupiter rules the 6th cusp as well. So 6th cusp, whenever it is ruled by a graha and he also becomes a spouse factor, can create breakups and divorces. Okay, if it is indicated in the chart, that's the main thing to keep in mind. So in the Saptamsha, Jupiter also rules the 12th cusp here. Okay, Navamsha is not ruling any house cusps, alright, but still Navamsha is the 6th Rashi Lord because Libra is still the ascendant in the Navamsha. It's a Vargottama ascendant here, which means the ascendant is same in D9 and D1. Okay, so in this example, Jupiter in fact can cause problems for this native. He can create issues in their relationship. Okay, as simple as that. That we know from a default now. So if there is a difficult transit or a difficult dasha running for such natives, he can create losses because of ruling some difficult house cusps. Okay, so of course D7, D9 are still some divisional charts that are not fine in division. Okay, it's not so much of degrees that we can calculate. But if you go into D60, D40, D45, which is the Kavedamsha, Akshavedamsha, and Shashtiyamsha, the impact of birth time will be strong, and then Jupiter can rule any other house sphere, which means he can trigger events relevant to that. Okay, and he could be ruling, of course, a sixth house, third house, 12th house, eighth house. In fact, let's say he rules the eighth house, he can even create death like suffering. In fact, he can also bring death. Okay, so such is the intricate and complex nature of astrology. So you can see why making some generic idiotic predictions will not work, or reading some newspaper articles will not work with transits. Okay, so you must take this into account for transit calculations and predictions as well. If you miss this fundamental concept of astrology and always make auspicious predictions for all Jupiter transits, like most often they do in on YouTube channels or on news channels or wherever, or news articles, if you only keep predicting positive transits for Jupiter and only negative transits for Saturn, then you are making a mess out of your predictions. Okay, and you will make the most erroneous predictions ever possible in astrology. As simple as that. Okay. So the next fifth point is natives who are running the nakshatra dasha or bhukti of Jupiter, or the Rashi dashas or bhukti of Aries or Taurus, will also be strongly impacted with this transit. Okay, nakshatra dashas are, in this example, it was Venus dasha for this native, but if they are running Jupiter dasha or Jupiter bhukti, they will be impacted strongly. And in terms of Rashi dashas, if they are running Aries dasha or Taurus dasha, they will be strongly impacted by this transit. Okay. Next, natives who have Jupiter as the Lagna Lord, which is Pisces or Sagittarius natives, or Jupiter as Atma Karaka, will be most impacted by this change in transit. It's a very simple rule, but mostly people will also forget to tell you that, or even the best of the astrologers might not pay attention to that sometimes because too many things are happening in the chart. Okay, so Sagittarius ascendant and Pisces ascendant people will always be impacted when Jupiter changes signs because he rules that Lagna. Same for the Atma Karaka as well. Okay, if Jupiter is the Atma Karaka, whenever there is a change in transit, that will impact them. Okay. Next, natives who have Jupiter in the sign of Aries or Taurus in the natal chart. Okay, this will be your Jupiter return. Again, depending on whether it is your first, second, third, or fifth Jupiter return, etc., Jupiter return will always give the results according to the returns he will have, and the impact will vary. Okay, so what we mean by return is, in this chart Jupiter was in Aries because we cast it to this year. So if Jupiter is returning to the natal point, it will be the first Jupiter return. Okay, and in this chart, let's say Jupiter is in the sign of Taurus. So if you have natal Jupiter in Taurus, he would be coming back to the Rashi of Taurus. So it's a Jupiter return for you. Okay, let's say it is your fourth Jupiter return, then you will have a certain impact because of that. Okay, so you must really pay attention to that. So these are the strongest or the most noticeable impacted natives, this relevant to Jupiter transits of 2023. Okay, so in the next video we can look into the Rahu Ketu transits.